Welcome everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to this Perfect Practice webinar series. I'm your moderator, Nancy Roberts. Today we'll be taking a closer look at how your practice can survive and even thrive during system downtime events. Today's webinar is being hosted by EHR Integration Services and eMedapps, and you'll hear about both of them more in just a moment. And before I introduce today's panelists, we want to take a quick look at how this webinar is going to proceed. So as you see, it's going to be a full and busy hour. We're going to start with an introduction to the Perfect Practice Alliance, what it is and how it can benefit your practice. And then we will introduce you to our primary presenters for today, who will be talking about giving you an explanation of and a demonstration of how eMedapps can help your practice survive and thrive during downtime events. And then after that, we will have a question and answer period. And about that, we just want to let you know that since this isn't a two-way audio conversation, if you have questions, you would enter them into your chat box, which you will see down in the lower corner of your screen. So just at any time you have a question during this hour, go ahead and enter it, and we will get to them at the end of the hour. So with that, well, let's get started with our webinar. I want to introduce you to today's presenters, Jamie Steck, who is Business Development Manager for EHR Integration Services. And from eMedapps, we have Joe Cernick, VP Business Development for eMedapps, and Vikram Sheshadri, who is the VP for Product Development at eMedapps. And now I will turn this over to Jamie.
Nancy, thank you very much. Welcome everybody. We appreciate you taking time today out of your busy schedules to join us for our Perfect Practice webinar series. We're excited to talk to you and have our partner eMedapps on the phone. We think this is a great opportunity for those times where your system might be down or unavailable, or even during planned outages as well. So we're really excited to be partnering with them and having them show the demonstration today. But first I wanted to talk just a little bit. As most of you know, recently we created the Perfect Practice Alliance. And what is that Perfect Practice Alliance, Nancy, if you would? Thank you. We want to know, certainly as all of us know, in the healthcare experience, when a patient goes through that experience from provider to staff to back office to billing, that what we do today is all underlined by our healthcare information technology. That platform is revolutionizing how we help the providers and the offices and the caregivers care for us, even us as patients, during this process. And we want to make sure that what we're offering through our Perfect Practice Alliance and our main partners, as well as eMedapps and other partners, is that we're offering that full experience of, that you can depend on that information, that the system will be up and running, and that what we offer covers that whole breadth of that experience for the patient, from front desk through the clinical, even to the back office. And in this case, in today's presentation, you'll see that if that provider can't access the information, or through natural events and outages, you can't get to the information, it's hard for providers to make a substantial guess because they don't have that information in front of them. We want to keep that provider in business and going throughout any issues or problems that we have. And so with that, I think what we'll do today is know that we have that covered from front to back, and our partner eMedapps is just another tool that we have to make sure that we are covering that whole process. So with that, I'd like to introduce Joe Cernick. He's the VP of Business Development over at eMedapps, and he's going to take us through and just give a quick background on eMedapps, and then we'll pass it over to Vic to make sure that we have plenty of time for the demonstrations and questions at the end. So Joe, are you there?
I am here. Thank you very much, Jamie.
You bet. It's all yours.
Again, thanks to everyone for taking the time to go through the webinar today. Wanted to tell you a little bit about eMedapps. Basically, we're a healthcare information technology consulting and products company. And essentially everything that we do is revolves around making the experience and making your system smarter, faster, and easier to use. So if we can go to the next slide. A little bit of our background. We've been around since 1999, serving only the healthcare community. We've got about 5,500 providers across the U.S., headquarters here in Chicago, and offices in San Diego and Houston as well, and basically experts in all things related to the health information technology field. So we've got services for all the things that you see here, as well as products, and our care connectivity platform is one of the things that encompasses the business continuity solution that we're going to talk about today. So to talk a little bit more about that, if we can go to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. So our care connectivity platform, and I think we may be missing one slide here, but our care connectivity platform essentially encompasses our services and products that revolve around making sure that the right information is provided to the right people at the right time and right place. So that includes our business continuity solution, our interfaces, our data conversion services, our hosting, and our mobile access products as well. Go ahead to the next slide. Here we go. So this was the slide I was looking for. So why even care about EHR downtime? And I can tell you from experience that you will experience downtime, whether it's planned or unplanned. And that's the reason we want to make sure that we've got something in place so that you can continue to see patients. Just to give you some ideas of how this affects people, one of our clients that we've had for many, many years came to us with an issue. They were having downtime because of an issue with their license key, actually, from their EHR vendor. So this actually was a McKesson Practice Partner client. And their issue was that the license key was being corrupted, and it was taking 4 hours or more for them to get that resolved and get the system back up. So once that license would get corrupted, they essentially had zero access whatsoever to any of their chart information, any of their patient information. It's a group with 100 providers, 7 locations, and those locations were constantly filled with 20 people in the waiting room. So their choice was to go ahead and see patients without a chart and take some guesses on what's going on, which is a huge risk, to send people home and cancel their appointments, which obviously is a revenue issue, and then not to mention how patients feel about having those appointments canceled and have to reschedule and come in again. So that's just one example, and in fact was really the genesis of this whole product. They came to us and said, can you provide us with a solution so that we can see our information even when the EHR is unavailable? And that's exactly what this solution is put there to do. We can go on to the next slide. And so our solution is called Carefinity, and essentially it's a business continuity solution and archiving solution which allows you to view patient information from any computer or smart device that's got a browser. We've built this to be very simple to use, since it's not something that providers may be in all the time. It's a downtime solution, but it is an all the time solution, so they can use it if they need to. But primarily it's used in downtime, both planned and unplanned. So this will address issues you may have with on-site data centers, with hosted data centers. And if we look at this graphic here, you'll see the EHR at the top. If we kind of focus on that main clinic location at the top, you'll see the EHR there. And what's happening is every 15 to 30 minutes, data from the patient's chart is copied into the Carefinity solution. That sits at that main clinic location there. And then if the EHR connectivity for the users is down, users are able to go into Carefinity and see that patient information. And you'll see how that works later. If you look down at the bottom, we can also take that Carefinity instance and host that outside of your main location. So if your concern is a physical disaster or something happening at your main clinic location, that can be hosted elsewhere to account for that as well. If we go to the next slide, we can talk about what the configuration might look like if you have many locations. So here we've got our main clinic location again and 3 remote locations. And if you look at remote clinic location number 1, you'll see that we've got a Carefinity instance installed there as well. So data is copied to the Carefinity instance that's at the main clinic location up above, as well as being copied to the Carefinity instance that is at the remote location. Remote location number 2 also has Carefinity, and you'll notice that the copy there happens between the Carefinity installation at remote location number 1 and remote location number 2, so that prevents additional overhead on the EHR system. And remote location number 3 does not have Carefinity installed there, but can still access that patient chart using the Carefinity installations at either the main clinic location or at clinic number 2 or clinic number 1. So they've got the ability to use any of those other installations of Carefinity and still see their patient information. And now we can turn it over to Vic to go into detail on how Carefinity looks for the users and how it works in the background.
Thanks, Joe. As Joe was saying, the intent of Carefinity is to provide you visible access to your EHR clinical data, and that's done through a browser-based application. So as Joe talked about on the back end, data is continuously being synced from your EHR database to the Carefinity system, and then it's made available through a browser-based application. The application itself is available in 2 different flavors, a desktop version and a mobile browser version. And what I'm going to run through here today with you is the desktop version, but the mobile is designed to give you access to the same data from devices like iPads or iPhones or Android phones. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to log into the portal, and I'm going to do that using my username and password. And once I come in, it's going to take me to my home page. I think the webinar is just catching up here as I get a feel for the speed of this. Okay, great. So you should be looking at the home page right now, and this is the appointment listing for the provider that this user is tied to. So in this case, test provider 3. Just a couple of things to remind you of on this screen. In the top left corner, you have a last sync timestamp, and this is important because this tells your users how fresh the data is that they're looking at. So throughout the day, as data is being synced from your EHR system, this counter is going to update itself as the sync's complete. So every 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how things are configured, you're going to get fresh data, new data available within Carefinity. If an outage occurs and Carefinity is unable to communicate with the EHR, this timestamp becomes stagnant as the data is unable to be synced from the EHR system. This is an indicator to your users of how long ago that connection was lost. And once connectivity is restored, the timestamp will start moving again. So users can quickly get an idea of how fresh the information is that they're looking at within the Carefinity system. On the appointment listing itself, I have the ability to look at appointments for other providers if I choose to do so, or for other dates if I choose to do so, with a date drop down in a calendar that I can choose from. For a given date, I have the listing of all the patients that are scheduled for the day. It's the appointment time, as well as the patient's name, the subject of their appointment, the reason they're coming in, and any status information if it's available for that appointment. I can open up a patient by clicking on the patient icon right here from the appointment, and it takes me to what we call our patient dashboard. What the patient dashboard provides you is some summary clinical information. At the top of the page, I have demographic data, the patient's name, address, medical record number, their gender, date of birth, phone, age, information. And then I've got some summary grids showing me the patient's problems, their allergies, their medications, their visits, their labs, and their order history. And what we show you on the dashboard is the 5 most recent, chronologically descending. So you're going to see the most recent information at the top of the grid. And if there is more data available, you'll see this little more icon in the bottom right-hand corner of that particular box. If there isn't, such as the allergies here, and there are only 2 allergies for this patient, this is what you'll see. You'll also notice that when I open that patient, a navigation panel opened here on the left-hand side to allow me to go through that patient's Carefinity chart. What this allows me to do is to go into more detail on any given section that I'm interested in, along with some additional sections that aren't part of our dashboard view. So I can click in the problem here to go into the details, or I could click the more here to take me to the same place, whichever one the user is more comfortable with. One thing I should mention in terms of the layout and the design of the application, one thing that we tried to keep in mind is the fact that we understand that Carefinity is not something that users are going to generally be in every day. So we wanted to make it a system that didn't have a steep learning curve associated with it when users came back in to use the system. So we wanted to make it intuitive that users could click around and find the information that they needed to find. So I'm going to click on the More icon here, and it's going to take me into the patient's problem list. And this is a problem summary. So again, I'm going to have the visit date that problem was captured on, and onset if it was captured, what the condition is, its current status, the coding system. So of course now with the ICD-10, all of you are capturing your problems in ICD-10, and so that would be available here as well. When was this diagnosed? Is it a resolved condition? And who captured that information in the system? I'm going to click on the allergies here, and it will take me into the patient's allergy list. Similar to the problem list, this gives me a list of information available. I'm going to get the date, the onset and resolved conditions if they're available, the ingredient, a brand name if there's one associated with it, the reaction, and the provider who captured this information in the system. I get a similar list for medications, which allows me to see what are the active or inactive meds this patient is on, depending on how the system is configured. Again, here I'm going to get the medication name and dose, the route, the quantity, the refills, the stop date for the medication if there is one, and who's the provider who prescribed this medication within my practice. The visit history allows me to see when this patient has been in my clinic and who they saw and why if that information was captured. So again, it's going to be chronologically descending, so I'm going to get the most recent visits at the top of the list, because again, in the event of an outage and a provider is using this system, the primary thing that they're going to be interested in is when was the patient last year, what did they come in for, and so they can quickly get to that information and see that. The laboratory grid allows me to look at patients' lab result data. What we do here is we provide you with a list of all the laboratory panels a patient has had, along with a count of the number of times that they've had that particular panel. So you can see that it defaulted to the AccuCheck being first on the list, which this patient has had one time on December 17, 2004, and you can see the result for that laboratory. Whereas if I were to click on this TSH, for example, where I've got 6 of them, I can see the different TSHs that have been done for this patient. It's chronologically moving out to the right, so the most recent test is going to be the first column, and then descending from there out. I can click on a particular test result and I can get more information about that test. So in this case, I can look at the comments that are associated with that test, any flag values that might be there, and the fact that this test is signed off on. The orders grid will show me a patient's orders history, and this test patient of mine doesn't have any. So let's go in and find a patient that does have some. By clicking on the patient search icon here on the left-hand side, my Carefinity database for patients that are available. I'm going to type in a couple of letters of the last name and some of the first name, and it's going to give me a list of all the matching patients that I could search from. And I'm going to go in here and open up that test patient. When I do that, it takes me back to the patient dashboard, just like we saw for a previous test patient, and I'm going to see that summary information on the dashboard again. We were looking at orders, so I'm going to click on the orders icon here, or I could go to the more on the dashboard. Both take me to the same place. What we do by orders is we group them by the type of order that it is. This is a dynamic list that's built based on the different types of orders that a patient has. So in this case, my test patient has got some diagnostic studies, some exam orders, immunizations, labs, and PPDs. By default, when I click on the tab, it's going to show me all the patient orders, but I do have the ability to go in and look at specific ones if I want to. So if I wanted to look at their diagnostic studies only, I can click on that and I would see those. The idea here is that your users will be able to see what was ordered for a patient, what the status of those orders are when that patient presents themselves in the event of an outage, so nothing is missed. The next two categories are my documents and images, and these are my visit notes and things that are scanned into the system. What we do with the visit notes is we show them chronologically descending, so that last visit note is going to be the top thing on the list. So again, in the event of an outage, that provider is going to be able to go in there and look at that top item and pick up that last visit note and view that information. What we do for the view is we create PDFs out of everything. So as long as the device that you're coming in from supports PDF, you'll be able to view all the documents and the scanned images. So if you're coming in from a mobile device, as long as you've got a PDF capability on that mobile device, you'll be able to see this information. So here's my the last progress note. The user can scroll down and look through that note and gather all the information that they need to from there. If they wanted to go look at a different note, they could click the back button here and it takes them back to the note listing, and they can go in and search for something else if that's appropriate. The Images tab allows users to look at scanned documents. And what we do here is we break it out by document type. So these are the different document types that are available, and I can click on a specific document type and I can go in to view that image again. And like I said before, what we're going to do is convert that into PDF and make it available to you through your PDF browser. So here's that scanned EKG that I had in my system. I can scroll through and look at it. If I wanted to zoom in or zoom out, I can support that as long as my browser supports that PDF capability. If I wanted to look at a different image, I could then go back to the images and search a different document type and view a different image if I wanted to do that. The last section of the clinical components of the patient chart here is a vitals list. I'm going to click on that, and this patient doesn't have any, so let's do the same thing we did before. And I'm going to go into my patient search, and I'm going to go look for a patient that might have some vital signs. I'm going to open up that patient. Again, it's going to take me to the patient dashboard. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to view the vitals. So what we do with the vitals is we provide you with a grid view, chronologically descending again, so the most recent one set of vitals will be at the top of the list. The patient's height, their weight, the pulse, their blood pressure, their BMI, temperature, respirations, and the SpO2 and the head circumference, if it's captured, will be available. The other thing we provide you with the vital section is the ability to do growth charts for patients. So if you have pediatrics in your practice, we understand that in the event of an outage, there's going to be a lot of well child visits that you're going through, and an important component of that well child is to provide growth charts to the parents for their patients. So you can do that right from Carefinity. So I'm going to go in here and say I want to generate a growth chart. It's going to show me the growth charts that are appropriate for this patient based on their gender and their age. And then I can go in and select the one that I'm interested in, and the system will generate the growth chart and allow me to print that out if I want to give it to the patient. One of the nice things with the growth charts that we generate is we also plot or list the vitals, I should say, here in the grid below, so it's a good item for the parents to take home with them and have that information available. Once I'm done, I can close my growth chart, and it takes me back to my vitals listing here. The last component that's visible on the in the patient list here is the ability to add a note. And what this does is it allows you, oops, let me change my test patient here real quick. Apologize for that. And I can't seem to add a note this morning, but what this allows you to do is to go in and capture information about a visit. It's a free text note, which allows you to go in and type up the information for that particular visit. So if it's a patient that the provider is seeing in the office, they can go in and capture that note. Or if it is a piece of information from a phone call or something like that for a visit that the provider is taking remotely, they can do it that way as well. The next section you see here is my report section. And what this does is it allows users with an ability to customize Carefinity. So we understand that there may be some data that particular practices are interested in that aren't it isn't available, I should say, through the default view that we have in the patient information. And so we allow you to bind your own crystal reports to Carefinity to view and generate as you see fit. So an example of when we did this was a large cardiology group that had a substantial Coumadin practice, and so they wanted to be able to conduct their Coumadin clinic even in the event of an outage. And so we created reports that would allow them to pull up their patients' PT-INR values as well as their goal values for the Coumadin clinic, so that they could manage their Coumadin dosage and still see those patients in the event of an outage. By clicking on a category of reports, a user can pull up a list of reports that they have available, and they can go in and view those reports and see the information there. Just as before, what we do is we generate PDFs for those particular reports, and we make that available here. So if it's appropriate to print out, so in this case, this is a patient label report that we generated because a practice still wanted to create reports, still create their patient labels even in the event of an outage. And so they wanted us to create a label for them that they could print out and affix to the documents they had in the office when there was an outage, versus other types of reports like the Coumadin report I talked to, where you may just be referencing it on screen and not actually generating hard copy from there. So those are the components of the Carefinity as it relates to a patient. Most of it is read-only, as we saw. The only item that you can enter information back in is the visit note, and I should mention that that note can be pushed back into Allscripts when connectivity is restored, if the clinic elects to do so. The last two items I have here that I want to talk about are what we call our sign-off queue and our tasks, and these are basically user approval queues. We break it out into two different sections because we allow previews for things in your review bin like documents and labs, and that's going to be available in your sign-off queue. So when you click on your sign-off queue, you're going to see anything that's come into your review bin for documents and labs that are available for sign-off. I can click on it to view a particular one, so in this case a lab result, and you'll see that I have all those lab results available to me on the right-hand side here. Now again, you got to keep in mind that this is a read-only system, so you can't sign off on these items in Carefinity, but you can reference them. So if something emergent came in prior to the outage, you wouldn't be stuck waiting for connectivity to be restored before your providers could take action on that. That information would be available to you and visible right away. The tasks are the remaining items in your review queue, and these are shown to you with the date, the item itself, who's the patient that's associated with that, if there is one, and who sent that to you. I should mention that you can access the patient's chart from either the sign-off queue or the tasks. So if I wanted to go look at something in more detail, so for example, I have some lab results on this test patient, I can go in and I can go look at those particular lab results and see those details if I wanted to. So in this case, maybe I want to look at their CMPs, and I'm going to be able to look at the different CMP values for that patient across time. And what the nice thing about this particular result is I've got some alert values, and those are made clear to the user through Carefinity here, with red representing high alert values and blue representing low alert values. As before, I could click on a particular test if I wanted to see more detail and view the comments and things like that that are associated with it, as we did before. And similar with the sign-off queue, I have the capability to jump in and view the patient that way as well. So I'm going to go back into my sign-off queue here, and I'm going to open up the patient by clicking on the patient icon. And again, I can go back in and look at their lab data and see the information as it came in, and maybe compare it to previous lab results to see if there's anything that I need to take action on or any critical values that I need to deal with in regards to doing that. The last thing I wanted to show real quick is the mobile representation of this. So I'm going try to trick my computer into thinking that it's a mobile device. So just bear with me for a second as I pull that up here. Okay, I'm going to refresh my view here, and I basically told my computer that it's dealing with a mobile device. And so I'm going to change my aspect ratio here a little bit so it looks like what you might expect to see from a mobile device when you try to access the system. So like I said earlier, the data that's available to you is the same as what you would expect to see in the desktop browser-based version. The look and feel is just a little bit different to take advantage of the real estate that you have available on the mobile device, or I should say the lack of real estate that you have available on the mobile device. I'm going to log in here with my username and password. And as before, it's going to take me to my appointment listing. I have the same options as I did before to go in and change the provider that I'm looking at. So for example, if I wanted to look at providers to schedule, I could do that. Or to change the date, if I wanted to go into my calendar and look at a different date and see my appointments for that date, I can do that from here as well. But in this case, I'm going to open up the patient's appointment. I'm going to click on the patient, and it's going to take me in to the patient's record. I do have the ability of collapsing my demographic toolbar. In this case, I can just minimize it so I can take advantage of the real estate that's available there. Or I can open it up and make it available here. And then the other difference that you'll notice is in the mobile view, we don't give you the summary information on the main screen. Again, due to real estate reasons, we give you the categories that are available, and then the user can go in and look at whichever category is of importance to them. So for example, if I wanted to view lab results, I could do that by clicking on the lab results. And as before, you have the ability to look at all the different panels that a particular patient has, and then I can click on a panel and do those results. So here's my TSH that we were looking at earlier. Again, I have the dates chronologically descending, the most recent one to the left, so I can see that information. And if I wanted to go in and look at any details, I can click on a particular item and I would get more detailed information available to me. I have access to all the information that I did in the desktop version through the mobile version as well. So I can go in and look at my problems, for example. I can go in and look at my allergies. I can go in and look at different items that are available to me and be able to see that data in the system. Oops, apologize here. Log me out. Let me get back in. Additionally, I have access to the same user-based items that I had in the desktop version. I can look at sign-off queues. I can look at tasks as appropriate, and see that information here as well. So Nancy, that's the demo of the software. I'm going to hand it back to you.
Okay, very good. I will switch this over here.
Nancy, while you're switching that over, this is Jamie, if I might.
Sure.
Hey, just wanted to add on one thing there that Vic was showing. If the provider viewing the information on the mobile device, on any LTE-enabled device, can get to this application, in that instance, if the note, if they chose to go in and do a note item there, they could take advantage of the voice-to-text recognition on their device and put that in, or type it in, or whatever else they might have. And again, that then would be available after the systems sync back up and the EHR TouchWorks comes back online. So again, that mobile functionality is very nice because not only can you see it and get it essentially from anywhere, but again have the ability to take information if you're rounding at the hospital or at a care center or any other place you might be to get notes quickly into the environment. So Nancy, sorry, as we queue up the questions, go back ahead. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Perfectly okay. That added more information yet, and I'm sure that there are additional questions, and if you have any, this is the time to get those into us in your chat box. But in the meantime, thanks very much to Joe and Vic for that presentation. We do have a few questions that came in. Now, some of these may be just reinforcements of some of the material that was presented, but let's start at the top here. One listener asked about having 10 locations. Do you need to have Carefinity installed at each location, or is this just a can you have an installation at just some? So
this is Joe. I can answer that. You can configure it so that you have an installation at all your locations. Essentially what we normally do is we'll work with clients to determine what the best configuration is for them. So as I showed in that in one of the graphic slides of the architecture, all the locations can have a Carefinity installation at their site, or they can leverage other installations. So if they have connectivity to one of the other locations, you can connect in and see the chart data from there. What typically happens is groups will identify a couple locations that they want to make sure that they have a local version at, and then other locations that may be able to tap into those more important locations. So it depends on the clinic itself, and we work with the groups to figure out the best configuration, both from a cost perspective and just from an architecture perspective.
okay. And
I
now
just
this
might
question.
add.
Sure. Go ahead.
So I was just going to add to that real quick. As Joe was saying, if a site elects not to have their own instance, a mobile-based solution might be part of their business continuity solution there, accessing the system over cellular bandwidth in the event of an outage, and being able to get to the data that way.
Okay. And now this next question I'm sure concerns many people. That is that in this case they're hosted. They worry about their internet connection to a hosted system. Will this solution address that issue?
Yeah, this is Joe again. That's one of the scenarios that this is really designed for. So one of the concerns when you're in a hosted situation is what happens if my internet connection goes down and I don't have access. So by having that local copy, here I've got the ability to go ahead and see those records, whether or not that internet connectivity is there for me. So yes, that will solve that scenario, absolutely. Great.
Vic, anything to add there, or is that?
Nope, I think that's
okay.
good
A good answer to that question. We're looking at creating notes within Carefinity, and this is obviously of great concern to many practices to be able to take and create notes. Can they use a form or a template document for providers instead of just a blank?
Yeah, I can address that. What Carefinity supports is PDF forms. So if users are familiar with building forms using the PDF concept, you can generate and create forms in Acrobat, and those forms can then be filled out. If you've gone to a government website and downloaded a form where you could fill it out online, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So those forms can be created and tied to Carefinity, and then users can select a form they want to use when they're creating a note and put that information in, and then it generates the PDF. And like I said during the demo, is when connectivity is restored, that PDF is then pushed back to the Allscripts system.
Okay. And moving along, what is the overhead on the EHR system with the copying going on?
That's a great question. This is Vic again.
Okay.
So certainly when we built this as a business continuity solution, we didn't want to bring down your production usage at the same time because it was overwhelming your server so much. So that's why I talked about a time range in terms of the sync. So what happens is when the sync is occurring, it's sort of metering itself to make sure that it's not overloading the system and and running too many queries at the same time. And so based on the size of the practice, that time to sync can range from anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes as that information is brought forth. And the other thing that we look at is when we have multiple instances of Carefinity, we configure that and set it up so that the other instances are being synced off of a single instance of Carefinity. So there's only one instance of Carefinity that's communicating with the EHR database, and the remaining are all communicating through the existing Carefinity instance. So if you think about it sort of like a daisy chain, with the first instance getting the updated data from EHR, and then all the remaining instances getting their updates from that first instance.
Okay. A question about printing. Can I print anything out of Carefinity?
So the PDFs that are pulled up, so any of the visit notes or the images, the scanned images, or any of the reports that are generated can be printed out by default. The screens themselves, you could do a print screen of those and print those out. We've had some users that have done that. But what we would recommend, if there's something that you would want to print out that's not a visit note or a scanned document, then a report could be built to create a printer-friendly view of that, if you will, and then print that out that way.
Okay. If providers want something that's not displayed or we haven't seen in this current version, can something new be added?
Yep. We are constantly enhancing and upgrading the system. This is our 3.0 release of Carefinity, so it's our third major release. We have some minor releases in between. So certainly we have an enhancement request queue that users can submit to. And then additionally, the reports is a great way for users to be able to add views to data that isn't part of the normal data that's displayed in the system.
Okay, and this looks like it's the last question that's come in here. This user says they have a disaster recovery program in which they back up data to the cloud. Isn't that an adequate solution? Isn't that good enough?
Sure. So that's a good question also, because it brings in the concept of disaster recovery versus business continuity, and a disaster recovery plan is critically important. But what business continuity is to address what you're going to do as an organization while your disaster recovery plan kicks in. So if I have a offsite backup of all my information, how long is it going to take for me to get that backup, restore it to a device that's usable, and make my system available again to my users? If we're talking during that time, what is my organization going to do? How am I going to be able to access information while I'm engaging my disaster recovery plan? So really a business continuity solution and disaster recovery go hand in hand and allow you to really get the most bang for your buck out of your disaster recovery solution as well, because if you have a good business continuity plan in place, you may not need to have your disaster recovery so robust that you have recovery within a very quick time frame. You may be able to support a longer recovery time frame because you do have a business continuity plan in place to keep operations going while that plan is being implemented. So they kind of go hand in hand and really complement each other in terms of your overall solution.
Okay, very good. That wraps up the questions here, and unless there's anything further from anyone, we want to thank you very much, Joe Cernick and Vikram Sheshadri, for a fascinating and informative, roughly 3/4 of an hour. We thank you all for your time and attention. If you would like to learn more, or you would like to schedule an exploratory call or a product demonstration, you can contact Christine Piper at the number or the email that you see there on your screen, and she would be very happy to facilitate that for you. So once again, from all of us here, we thank you all very much for your time this afternoon.